or multiple glasses of wine.
Yeah, there you go.
And we are now live on Zoom. So both platforms behaving fantastic. And we're going to wait till the 8 o'clock East Coast time, because John and Ashley, you don't know, or maybe you do know, that we moved out of Chicago to Naples, Florida.
Oh,
I did not know that.
okay.
If you aren't going to get to Napa, you might as well move to a city that at least it's close NAP, but has an ocean, and
Yeah.
we decided to do.
And
Debbie
a big
Long,
wine auction.
and a big wine auction. So
Yeah.
yes, Jan Kiefer, Kay Jurica, Peter Glick, hello sir, Sean Manning in Colorado, Stefan Meyer, very good to see you. And we'll give this a little bit more time as we get to nearly the top of the hour. And Facebook folks, feel free to comment to Ivy, that is going to be monitoring that chat. We've got an awesome evening this week lined up. Super, super excited for SIP 34. And 34, very special number to all Chicago sports fans, because Walter Payton, who's greatest running back of all time. And it's probably the only football player I can remember with 34. Earl Campbell may have been 34. And other than that, I'm fresh out of football players from the 80s. So I don't know why I can't name any. Jim Brubaker is on, also from Colorado. And then Denise is going to comment in the chat line on Zoom, so everyone can make certain they're communicating with everybody. But this is SIP 34, our Friday night feature with excellent winemakers, excellent wines from the Napa and Sonoma Valley. My name is Martin Cody, co-founder of Cellar Angels, and Cellar Angels is a private online direct-to-consumer curator of the fine wines from Napa and Sonoma that really aren't available in the retail setting. So these are the wines you discover on your third or fourth or fifth trip to Napa, when you've done the large houses and you've gotten tired of being 5 deep at a tasting room, and you have ventured off into the hillsides to meet some fantastic people and wonder, oh my goodness, why have I never been able to find your 100 case production? And there's a reason for that, because the 3-tier system really doesn't work for the small producers, of which about 85% of them in the Napa and Sonoma Valleys are classified as small producers. So Cellar Angels is a company dedicated to their success. It's founded in 2010, now going into our 10th or 11th year of operation. We like telling the stories of these great wine producers and even better people. And tonight is no exception, quite honestly, because I say a lot that wine brings people together, and it was a couple of people that introduced us to John and Ashley, and I would like to introduce them to all of you. So without much further ado, John and Ashley Derr of Lampyridae Vineyards, welcome, and thanks for spending some of your Friday with us.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you. Happy to be here.
So just to give some folks a little orientation geographically on where we are, over my shoulder is probably the most challenging vineyard I ever had to get to. And it is up on top of Mount Veeder. And I thought we had a arduous task getting up there until our film crew came bouncing around the turn in a van with equipment that was strewn everywhere inside the van. And I thought James was going to kill me when he got out of that van, because I think the road had I don't know if it was rain worn or had some potholes in it or whatever, but vans are not made for that
Right.
drive up. But it is a spectacular piece of property. And Debbie and Philip Long, you guys are great for joining Doug Rutherford. But we were talking a little bit earlier in the pre-recorded session about the steepness of this hillside. And it is not a camera trick. This isn't Photoshop. I don't even know, do you guys know what degree slope that is?
The block that you're kind of in front of there is just approaching 30%.
So that's a 30-degree slope.
Or that's a legal limit of vineyards in Napa Valley is 30%.
All right, so then it's probably 37 or so?
Yeah. There is a very small portion of this block you're looking at that is over 30, but they allow you, as long as it's not, they call it what's blended, meaning that you don't blend over 30%. But the area you're looking at, and then the block in the further block behind you, that's another one close to 25 to 30%. So you're on Mount Veeder. I mean, there's just not a lot of flat ground up there.
No, so that's interesting, the blending aspect. So you can have some spots that are 40, 45 degrees,
Small, very small. It has to be very small.
Okay, so that's fantastic. But this is an extremely high location, and I don't know how you found it. So please share with me. This is not one of those places where you're like, yeah, let's go up that road and see if there's a vineyard block for sale.
Yeah, well, it goes back to Ash and I were married in '94 in St. Helena. And shortly after that, we just started talking about what we, really, did we want to stay in Napa Valley? Is it Napa? We had been there for a couple of years and we were just trying to decide, is this a place? Ashley was looking at Cornell to go back to school and we just didn't know. So we thought, well, if we're going to look, let's just start looking around for land. And we love the Amador foothills. We love Anderson Valley. We just didn't think we'd be able to stay in Napa because of the price. It just, even in '94, '95, it was, for us, it was still very expensive to buy property there. I engaged with a realtor, a friend, and he said, well, I have this one piece on Dry Creek. We went and looked at it. It didn't have water, which I knew as an agriculturalist, we needed, that was going to be a critical to us. He goes, I have this other piece up on the very top of Mount Veeder. It's difficult to get to. Wineries have come and looked at it and they just did not want to take a shot at it. They didn't understand how they could develop it into a vineyard. So we went and took a look at it. And yeah, it was challenging. The road actually, Martin, is in so much better shape than it was when we first went up there. So, and I worked for a company at the time, or actually I was consulting with a company, Pena Vineyard Management, who I ended up working for. They're one of the best developers in Napa Valley. And so when we took a look at it, I asked them if they could come take a look at it with me. They came to around the corner. We got it to the top of the hill. They looked down and said, this doesn't seem that difficult. So we ended up putting an offer in on it. And we got 35 acres for $245,000, which in Napa, that was crazy. It was unheard of at that time. So we ran at it, and it turned out to be a good decision.
Yeah, you could even get half an acre for that now, maybe 3/4 of an acre.
It would be challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We said there was another gentleman on the other side of Mount Veeder who had started a development up there and just kind of ran out of money and wasn't able to kind of finish it. And so we had the vision, for what the development could be, I think, when we first saw it. And without that, I don't know if it was all tree covered, like, behind you, which was virtually what most of the property was. I don't know if we could have had that vision, but just seeing that, that how you could kind of develop from there, it gave us the vision to be able to see what we could do.
So you got married in St. Helena. So you were already in wine country. Was it agricultural that brought you to wine country? Or?
Yes. John got a job as a crop consultant up here pretty much right out of college. And
where was college?
Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
That's where we met in college. And I was in what's called the fruit science program with viticulture kind of as a concentration. Ashley was in ornamental horticulture.
Interesting. And where were you from prior to college? California or out east or Midwest?
California. Yeah, I grew up in we're both Navy. We had both military families. I grew up mostly down in San Diego, and John, his dad retired and moved to the Central Valley, Visalia area. And so he had worked in agriculture for a long time. I had a desire to study agriculture. So when I went to college, we both were in ag, and it was John kind of moving to Napa and us getting married that really brought us to Napa. I was more in horticulture with flowers and floriculture, and there just wasn't any opportunity here for that. So I had started working for a researcher doing entomology research, and when I came here, I worked for the farm advisor, and then worked for a farming company, and we started our roots definitely in grapes, mostly here. So
you were a flower child.
I was, yeah.
When I met her.
I was going to say, this is like tailor made for you're feeding me these lines. This is unbelievable. And I love it about that. I mean, it's how could you not growing up in that era and that time? And I mean, that's awesome. John, I'm interested in how the decision, literally fresh out of college, to go to Napa, because Napa wasn't, it wasn't as agriculturally popular as it is now. But so how did that come about?
I've had to think back about this, but it was that feeling of I wanted to get into wine, to growing wine. Growing up in San Joaquin Valley, yeah, you grow wine grapes, but you grow a lot of table grapes, cotton, hay, sugar beets, and so I was around all that in the San Joaquin Valley, which was fantastic. But I just really knew I wanted to get into wine grapes. I just knew that that was ultimately what I wanted to pursue. And it's like, if you're going to go into acting, you go to Hollywood. If you're going to go into computers, you go to Silicon Valley. If you're, so Napa Valley was the place. If you're going to go challenge yourself to the best people, to the best wines, you go there, and that's where you go to find the best opportunities to challenge and define whether this is really something that's going to be your life.
No, that's actually a great way to phrase it too, because if you're going to do something, go to the place where the best commiserate, hang out, and produce the best stuff.
You're going to learn the most, because college teaches you a lot about your ultimate profession. But as I think we all know, is getting into the business world, getting into your job is where the people around you is who you're going to learn from. That's really who you're going to ultimately get the most knowledge from. And it's proven true with me. I've had so many people who've mentored me through the years, and it could go on forever, the number of people I could tell you who has helped me become who I am today.
I mean, that's one of the things I love about the wine business. AJ Walker, hello on Facebook. Amy McGowan, hello on Facebook. And Scott Eddy, hello on Facebook. Mr. Scott Eddy, by the way, one of the greatest influencers in the social world in the world. I love the fact that you decided to do that, John and Ashley, that you went around for the ride, because you take a look at the people that have done that throughout sports. I marveled when Annika Sorensen decided, I want to play on the PGA Tour. I've done the LPGA, but now I want to elevate my game and take it to where the boys play. So that's a pretty fascinating character trait. So when fresh out of college, without the experience, you decided this is where I want to go learn about this industry. And was it about from the agricultural side, or was it the intent to, I want to make great grapes and then sell them and be in, be in the growing side or the commercial side?
No, always the growing side. Still today, Ashley and I will tell you, we are farmers. That's what we want to do. That's where our heart is. That's where our desire is. And it's probably why, when we decided to make a wine, we weren't going to make everything off of our property. We said, let's pick the best blocks that we think we could make the best wines off of our property. Let's choose those, a Grenache, a Cabernet, and let's make a small amount. Let's just make this the amount that we are comfortable with, the amount that we think we can sell, and not have to be the wine side be that we were strapped to it. And I got that advice again from more than a few people who said, don't grow your wine program too big. You're a farmer at heart. Be a farmer at heart. Have a small wine label that you can really cherish, really make high quality wines, and be there. Don't grow to a point where you're frustrated with it. Selling wine is hard. It's not the easiest thing to do. You've got to knock on a lot of doors, and you're going to get said no to. That's just the nature of wine selling, and it's hard. It's not something Ashley and I are comfortable with. Selling wine, we can sell our grapes. That's easy for us, but selling wine is a whole different animal.
Yeah, that's why I like programs like yours, because you help us, get out there and get the word out. We have beautiful wines that come off our property, and having someone help us do that, it's been really a nice partnership with you guys.
Awesome, and we love it as well, because it's fun for us to expose people to great wines that they would never have the opportunity to ever access unless they went to the Valley, 2 or 3 times a year over a period of subsequent years, to where you get to meet people that then, to your point, John, it's like, hey, if you think this is good, I need to introduce you to someone up on top of Mount Veeder type of thing. And it's such a wonderful, close-knit community in that regard. Julie Fogarty, who is a regular SIP member from the Chicago area, she has a question, and I think you just kind of answered it. Is selling wine harder than growing wine or being a farmer?
Yes, absolutely.
It's not to say that farming or growing grapes, vineyards, is easy. We're not trying to say that. It's what we know.
Yeah,
we know it. We're comfortable with it. We're willing to take the risks that are involved in farming. Making wine is just something we're not as experienced with. It's just not something that is in our blood.
Well, and it's interesting because Doug Rutherford just provided a perfect segue in a question. Hopefully the nice Beringer wines from your vineyard have helped. And
We get that, people have definitely called us, written us and said, I discovered you through loving your single vineyard Beringer wines. And, I really want to try your own wine. So yes, it's been a very nice partnership with Beringer.
And let's talk a little bit about that partnership, because for those of you that don't know, Beringer has a private reserve program that I think they have 4 or 5 single vineyard wines.
I believe there's.
I think it's about
5.
They've got about 3 or 4 of their own properties, and then they outsource to people like us. It used to be the Vote property that I used to farm, actually, and we sold it to them. And Nickel or Carpy Connolly, no, that's somebody else.
I think there's I believe
Maybe
there's
about
7. It used to
7
be
total
7,
vineyards that go into the private
yeah.
reserve.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
both, our wine both goes into the private reserve as well as the single vineyard.
So that's the private reserve program is kind of nice because they've got, as we were just talking, 5 to 7 different vineyard sources that they source for the final blend. The final blend it is not your Tuesday night taco wine. It is a very special bottle of wine, and it has a price point that commands that specialness about it. But then also, as I think a unique attribute of that program is, in addition to whatever's in the final blend, they sell those wines, individual bottles of that vineyard block. So the Lampyridae bottle, it's incredible that you have that relationship with them. And I think it's great that people kind of do some due diligence and research and go, okay, so this is from a vineyard on Mount Veeder that I've never heard of. And, thank goodness for Google and the telephone. And I think when you have your wines made, I think the story is fascinating. I'd love for you to share it about, I know you saved a bunch of money on the land, and was the intent, well, now we can spend it all on a winemaker. Because
Actually, we have some amazing partnerships. So the cab that we make is the communication block, and it's this bottle right here. If you can see that in the screen.
Yep, perfect.
But Aaron Pott, when we first decided to do that wine, we met with Aaron Pott, and we were talking to him about the idea we had of donating all of the profits from this wine to help a nonprofit that I was starting at the time. And that nonprofit is called Napa Valley Kids Connect. It's a program that helps support children and students in the Napa Valley with technology and access to curriculum. Students that can't either speak or need assistance accessing materials to be able to work on their curriculum on the computers, or what have you. And so when we met with Aaron, he said, basically, look no further, I'm your man, basically were the words out of his mouth. Really an amazing man. If you know Aaron, has a huge heart. And so he actually donated his time to create this wine and produce this wine for us.
He donated his time, the facility to make it at, the barrel to put it in, which, this was a cost to him. But he was such a generous supporter of this program Ashley was starting that, we couldn't thank him more. He's been a good friend for a long time. And
great job with our wine. Made a really beautiful wine
for us
and for the program.
And I think that's an important aspect of the story is the donation part, because you hear a lot in Napa specifically, with the cult Cabernets commanding $300, $400, $500 a bottle, and these winemakers that are heralded and walking around on rare earth. And then you hear about a story like Aaron, who says in the interview process, stop looking for a winemaker, I'm your guy. And oh, by the way, I'm not charging you for a thing, just because he's so moved by the mission of what you're doing to donate these proceeds for this program. That should be on the front page of Spectator. That's the type of story that endears people to the region. And I wish there was more of it. And Scotland Kiefer, also from Chicago. Scotland, you're right, because he says, I'm sure it's easier to sell once people taste the wines, because the Grenache is awesome and the communication block is great too. So Scotland, a terrific palate and an appreciator of fine wine. So you have, I think that actually, since we talk about Cabernet, we've talked about Grenache, I'm going to ask the first poll question. So everyone has to, get the appetizers off your fingers. You're going to have to get the keyboard ready, and you will be able to see this. John and Ashley purchased this property in 1998. They produced world-class Cabernet and also their favorite variety, Syrah, Zinfandel, Grenache. I should have put Cabernet in there. I'll give this about 5 more seconds, and the pot from last week has carried over. If you two need a moment to discuss off camera, let me know.
She just agreed with me. I just said something to her.
All right. So the answer is, look at those smart people.
Look at those numbers.
You know,
All
Mark,
right.
but I just said to Ashley, I said, you know, it's interesting because when we bought the property, our very first acre we planted was Zinfandel. Because at the time,
Well-
Zinfandel was not, I don't even know if we knew what Grenache was.
Yeah.
We love Zinfandels, A. Raffinelli, the Ridge Zinfandels. I mean, that was our favorite wine at that time. And so the very first acre we planted up there, we said, we're doing Zinfandel because we may be drinking all this stuff. Who knows? So Zinfandel really, and it still is one of our favorite varietals.
When it's done well, yeah.
When it's done well, yeah. If it's not if it's not too big, we don't like the big ripe zins.
No, and it's funny because I had that information that Zinfandel was your favorite, and then Ashley corrected me yesterday.
Yeah, well.
So
Well, I think it might even say it on the website, honestly. But yeah, so once we started getting into more of the rum varietals, that's just the direction that we've got. They're so drinkable. They're so beautiful with food. And
how did you get into the Rhone varietals when you live in cab country?
it's just what we were drinking,
Yeah.
honestly. You know, it's just what we gravitated towards. And so after kind of years of that, we decided to, when we were doing our next phase of planting, after we had our, you know, our Cabernet all planted in the 1 acres and still there, we just said, you know, I don't want to grow Cab anymore. I want to grow something different. I want to grow something that we want to drink. And so we planted Syrah and Grenache on basically the hillside that's farthest behind you,
Right behind
off
your
to the
head.
right.
You
And
can kinda see it
right where
there.
that tree, where that tree is in the middle of the block. And so we planted an acre of Grenache and an acre of Syrah, and those
There,
really have
there it
turned
is.
out to be absolutely gorgeous wines. So
Yeah, and Martin, I think you'll find, if you ask 100% of the winemakers in Napa Valley, the actual winemaker people.
Right.
Cab is not their favorite wine to drink. I'll guarantee you, if they're honest with you, they drink oddball wines. They're looking for things that are strange, that are unique, because we all have access to Cabernet here.
Right.
We can drink great cabs every day, but most of the great winemakers in this valley, you'll find Grenaches, Trousseau Gris, you know, these interesting varietals they'll come up with it. They come to your house, they don't bring a Cabernet. Never.
No.
They're going to bring
No.
something interesting, really.
And especially if, you know, given Aaron's background and he's right over the hill while the crow flies, you know, Aaron's not bringing a cab to your house.
Now,
yeah.
you know, his, I don't know if he still calls it, but he used to be Chateauneuf de Pot. That was his
He still
little
calls it
vineyard.
that.
Does he?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know.
He still calls it Chateauneuf de Pot. I love it. And it's interesting because that's actually, you know, where Grenache comes from in the Rhone Valley, and some of the most expensive wines in the world are
In the
Chateauneuf
world,
de Pot, and Grenache is the main grape in those wines. And so, and Ashley, you're 100% correct. They are so good with food,
Mhm.
and I'm going to show folks this bottle because that is the bottle we're drinking out of, and it has got an incredibly unusual label. So walk me through the label, because the front label doesn't have a word on it.
Which legally means it's the back label, because you have to put the alcohol content on the front label. So the back label that looks like the back label is technically the front label. Legally, it's the front label. But
And the hill behind me is 30 degrees. I get it. You guys are
Exactly.
just to be
Just to be clear.
right. Look at John. I don't know who's listening, but just on the legal side of things.
Yeah, who's out there? Anyway, originally our vineyard we called Firefly. From the top of the hill, Ashley's mother's from the East Coast and father. And so when we first took them up there, you can look out from the hill, that tank off to your right or your left, off to the right of the photo up there, and you can see San Francisco and the whole Bay Area and all the lights blinking, and it's a beautiful view. And her mother said, God, it looks like fireflies out there. And so we're like, Firefly, that seems kind of, we hadn't chosen a name for our site. And so we thought Firefly. Well, a buddy of mine who runs a large label company calls me one day and says, hey, I'm running like 50,000 run on a Firefly Ridge label. I was like, what? So Safeway had used the name. So we realized, all right, that's not going to work. We can't, we're not going to fight them for the name. And so Lampyridae is the family of insects that contains fireflies. So under the family, you'll find fireflies there. And so we decided to change the name to Lampyridae. So being that lamp, we had originally, the label was going to be just an old style flange lamp. And Ashley's brother, when he looked at it, he says, you know, you guys ought to incorporate the wings of the firefly into your label. And we're like, oh, that seems like a pretty cool idea. And so we approached the gal who's doing the design and told her to add it, and she loved it. She just said, this is so cool. So she worked on it, and this is what came from it, is the lamp with the wings of the firefly.
I love it. And it's because it's an absolute conversation starter, number one.
Yeah.
And since great wine brings people together, it usually has conversation and great food. And so when you have this wine, and by the way, let's continue with that legal theme. So 14.8% alcohol. So we know there's plus or minus 3, right? Type of thing. But if great wine brings people together for great food, what foods do you most enjoy and have you learned that pairs very, very well with this Grenache?
I like Fruit Loops. I mean, I think the thing about Grenache, it goes with everything. We have it with salmon. We'll have it with pork. We're certainly going to have quite a few bottles at Thanksgiving. It
is really, we released this right around Thanksgiving, and it is so perfectly paired with Thanksgiving dinner.
All the things, the cranberries, and because you get the notes when you drink it. You get these notes of kind of the bigger blackberries and blueberries and cherry notes, and it just seems to be a wine that fits so beautifully with that introduction of fall.
It's not overpowering with the lighter meats,
No, and even at 14.8, we joke around a little bit, that seems high. There's no heat in this at all. It's incredibly well balanced, very well balanced. And judging by some of the comments, Nick Schramm, this is pouring very nicely. Jeff and Jane Greasy, I'm just going to raise a glass to you because you've been here as many times as we have, 34 weeks in a row. We have to be here. You choose to be here. So thank you so much for that. And Stefan, you also Stefan actually says he thought the label was very intriguing, and his wife is an artist and she was elated when she saw the label. So I think it's a neat aspect of it because it's a challenging part of, like you talked about earlier, selling wine is difficult. You have to make all these decisions like, oh my God, what kind of label are we going to have? What is it going to look like? We don't want it to be pedestrian. We want it to stand out. I mean, there's a million decisions on it. And this just absolutely pops, is unique. So congratulations on that. You did great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But as we all know, the label can be fantastic, but if what inside is not good, and this is amazing. So I'm intrigued that the Thanksgiving dinner, because I would not normally have thought of Grenache, and now I'm sitting here thinking, why wouldn't I? There's so many hearty dishes on that table.
It is a really beautiful wine with the dinner, and that has pepper in it, and all of those deep fruits, which just bring out such great flavors.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because there might have to be another bottle of this opened up a couple weeks down the road when we have that bird. I am going to show some folks just a little spot that we like to do called Google Earth to kind of show folks where you are. And it is, I mean, everyone knows that we always start with wine region because for us, it's the most important area of the world. And it is always Napa and Sonoma. And so when you look at this mountain line, and you're not that far out of Napa from where you guys are located.
We actually enter through Sonoma. As you guys are coming up that awful road, you're actually in Sonoma at the time. When you come through our gate, you cross into Napa. So we're literally on the county line.
So let's just zoom in there so everyone gets a perspective on this absolutely spectacular piece of land. And I'll slow it down there because you can kind of see now just the hillside. And as we get further and further in, you get to see just the terrain. And it's insane. And we have it.
Martin, you were
Go
saying
ahead.
this looks to be after the 17 fires.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because you can see the forestation that did exist,
Yep.
which is amazing because this is 2014. And I mean, this was all just forest when you were here?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're looking to the south there, that's the northern part of Mayacamas. That's their property. And then just off to the south of that block. And then as you go lower in the vineyard to the lower block to my left, I'm looking at, I guess your left.
Yeah.
That's Sky Vineyards, and a really great Zinfandel producer. And the kind of off to our northeast from here would be the old Chateau Patel properties. And yeah, it's really interesting when you really get a sense of what's around here. There's a lot of amazing properties around us.
Yeah, and this hill is incredibly steep.
So that's the one you're looking at and you're waving back and forth on. That's
Yeah.
what's right behind you on your photo.
Yep.
Behind you. Oh, you're in a photo then that the other block off to your right shoulder is not developed yet. We developed that in 2016, that one.
So that one was developed in 2016. So let's just
Yes.
see.
And that's a project we did with Handwritten wines. It was
Is that Judd Wallenbrock?
It's Jessup Cellars, and Handwritten is their high-end Vineyard Designic wines. And so what we did is we, with Rob, I grew up with Rob in the San Joaquin Valley, and we always thought about wanting to do a project together. So that block there is an acre of Cab Franc, and about 1/10 of an acre of Petit Verdot. That our goal is to pick it on the same day, which isn't done a lot around here, and co-ferment it. So that's our goal, and we've been able to do it 2 years in a row. You know, Rob says to us, he says, listen, if the Cab Franc's way behind in ripeness, we're not going to do it that way. But so far, we've been able to bring them pretty close in ripeness together. And it's going to be a really exciting wine project.
Yeah, it's funny because we've had the Jessup Cellars folks on Cellar Angels a couple of times.
Okay.
They make some great wines.
Yes, definitely.
So how often do you get up to this house?
Well, we lived up there. We raised our children up there for a long time. And then when things got a little busier with them and their activities, we moved down to town. So we're up there, a lot through the summer and through harvest and, on holidays and that type of thing and various weekends, but not quite as much as we used to be.
I mean, it really gives you a sense of just horrific devastation, those fires this is February of 2018. So
Yeah.
6 months earlier, this was all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can clearly see how the vineyards acted as a break and how it came right up to your house.
It did. Yeah, it basically burnt right up to our house. We had a nice burn mark right in the front deck, and thankfully that didn't take off. But we have weather stations up there. So it's kind of interesting that we could tell exactly when it came through, and it was within a 15-minute period that the fire swept through. It came through so fast that it just went right around the vineyard and damaged maybe about an acre of vines down below and the new block that we had just planted. But the bulk of it, really vineyards are beautiful fire breaks,
Yes.
So it really kind of saved everything.
And actually, John, you're right. The county line is here. So
It's right there. Yeah, we're right off the county line.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is incredible. No, that is just such a picture perfect piece of property. I applaud you for having the vision of it being all trees and saying, yeah, we can make a vineyard here.
Yeah.
Was that-
John's vision and mine.
I think we were probably, Martin, a little naive,
I think
and
a little
which
naive,
helps.
too.
I think when you're going into something like this, that helps to.
Yeah, our first projections were pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
How we're going to be getting 4 tons per acre and all these money, that never happened.
Yeah, Bob Steinhauer, who is the legendary viticulturist from Beringer, when I first told him that, I said when we were doing a pre-plant contract in '99 with them, and And I said, he goes, so what are you guys thinking? And I said, well, Bob, I want to, we'll project 4 tons per acre. And he just laughed. He goes, yeah, good luck. We average about 2.5.
2.5.
I mean,
Three's a decent year.
yeah, we
for
get
us.
3. We're pretty happy.
And very tiny berries, which gives us such great concentration in our wine, and the wine that is produced up our vineyard. Really a great acidity for longevity in the wines. The acidity really helps them hold up for a long time. They just get better and better, the longer you hold them.
Right.
When,
my
go ahead.
comments being our neighbors, you get kind of an idea of how our wines are projected to age. I mean, they're going to age for years and years.
That's exactly where I was going, because I don't remember, what was the first vintage date?
Our Zinfandel, who friends of ours, the Scholzes, we sold it to, made an 01 Zinfandel. So we planted that block in 98, got the first crop off in 01. We planted the Cabernet in 01. Beringer took a little bit in 03, but the first vintage you can see from Beringer of the single vineyard is in 04. The 04 Cab is their very first. So yeah, the first wine ever made from our property was an 01 Zinfandel.
And do you still have any of that left?
We've got a couple bottles. And I opened a 04 Zinfandel not that long ago, and it was
Holds up.
it was really nice.
Yeah.
And the 04 Cabs are obviously they're still drinking really well.
That's incredible. And that's where I was going when I was trying to figure out when you mentioned the Mayacamas and their wine ages just so wonderfully well. And John, your agricultural background, what was it about this particular site? Did you do soil tests? What was it that drew you here that said, yeah, this is actually, I think this can be okay. So let's go get a second and third opinion.
The price. It's the only thing we could afford. No, it was the uniqueness of it. It really was the volcanic soil. That to me, I just thought that was so fascinating. Having been a crop consultant in the valley and working with, all these different high-end cult wineries and seeing what they were doing, bringing up some of my friends up there before we bought it. And they're fascinated by it. And one of the things that more than a few people said, it reminded them of Provence. That was the thing. Even though we didn't go initially with the Rhone, or even those style of wines, they just said, God, these soils and the way it looks just reminds me so much of Provence. It has that really white, chalky kind of look, but it's not limestone. It's a tufa type of soil. So it's really, the pH is very low, not a lot of nitrogen, high potassium, very low magnesium, very low, nitrogen. Everything else is pretty low, other than the potassium, and that is where you get the changes in your pH in the wines, which allow for some of that longevity we feel.
Well, and sometimes Google Earth and even the image behind me can give you an indication of the steepness and the topography. But I do want to share a picture when Denise and I, you were kind enough to take us to the top of the vineyard in like a gator and let us walk out and then left us up there. But so this is, there's a geological site up there or something, right? Yeah. There's a path and so we walked and went out there, and this is overlooking all of Napa Valley, but yeah, you go 2 or 3 feet to the right or left there, and one person's coming back and the other one's going to have to face it, and they're going to face some questions.
You fall into a steep caldera, I guess it's called. And
so this is all volcanic rock?
Yeah, everything you're seeing. Yeah, behind you, like I said, is a big, half circle. I think they still call it a caldera. It may not be geologically called that, but that's what it was, a blowout of a vent. It's not, you're not standing on the actual volcanic peak, the old, thousands years ago. That's actually over on the Mayacamas property. So what you're looking at, what you're standing on is what's called a side vent that blew out and blew all of its rock and all that toward the Napa Valley, which deposited there, whatever, 1 million years ago.
Well, and I think you're at 2,500 feet.
Yeah.
The vineyard is, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's the peak. You're at the peak up there, which is 26.5. So yeah. Yeah,
that's incredible. And I like, there's a great picture on, I think on the Cellar Angels website right now of you two standing, and you can see San Francisco from parts of the property.
Yeah.
Yeah, the very top of the hill, you see the whole Bay Area. We've done 4th of July up there quite a bit, and you can see like 35 different sets of fireworks all around the entire Bay Area. It's pretty fantastic.
That does not stink. That is.
It's really, it's
They're
pretty
not
cool.
very big,
Yeah,
but
you can see them.
you can see them.
But it's yeah. But I mean, I think the most people I've ever seen, it's like, oh, we caught 2 towns worth of fireworks. But no, you guys have caught 30. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so that's looking
Mission-
out directly south.
yeah, that's and you can now see just how dense those forests were.
Yeah.
And then right below, this is the house where all that fires burned right up to the house.
Yes.
It's you're right. It's a pretty special place. Hang on. Mission Control tells me she has one more picture. And we used to have the tune to Jeopardy, but we wrote.
That's good.
Yeah.
Lunch on the terrace.
Yeah.
Another day in the life.
I know.
Work. Yeah. Work.
This is all we do.
This- charcuteries and decanted wine.
Yep.
Exactly.
But you do get an idea of how steep that is, because that was after the shoot with John and Ashley, who were gracious to host us up there. And I really think that I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I'm glad it's going well, because it's just magical what you've been able to produce. And this
Thank you.
Grenache is singing. What is, what's in store for you in the future? You mentioned earlier, look, we don't ever want to be slaves to this type of thing, because we're at X thousands of cases and it's all consuming 24/7. So what does the future look like for each of you in this crazy business?
Well, so we've kind of expanded. We have a farming company, and we farm about 100 acres of mountain vineyards now. And that's, very rewarding. It's very rewarding to be able to have a great crew that we can, do some really great work around the Napa Valley and give them a livelihood, really. So that's been really rewarding. We always will make probably a very small amount of wine. We're at 150 cases now, 50 of the cab and 100 of the Grenache. And I think that's a great level for us. It's still something to present from our vineyard, and but not too much to have to really be a slave to it. And then just farming our own vineyard, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure beyond that. We're pretty pleased with the way things have gone and the work we've been able to do. And
The 100 acres that you farm, is that for 2 or 3 producers? Is it for 1? Is it for a half dozen?
we have 11 clients now. So some are very small. We have a couple of 10-acre vineyards, but but all mountaintops. So our crew doesn't love us that much, because they go from our place all the way to the top of Atlas Peak, to the top of Angwin, to, we are a little spread out.
So if someone has a mountaintop vineyard, they're like, no. They're like, oh no, I have got the crew for you.
I've got the one you need.
They're in good shape. They're young. They're in good shape.
That is incredible.
Yeah, Martin, I mean, I think maybe even to drill down a little bit more into your question, is we have a 21-year-old, 17 and a 15-year-old. So people ask us, and they ask them, is this something you guys want to do? And at that age, they don't know. They're not positive. Our kids come out. This was the first year we officially hired our son to work for us. He's driving tractors. He's delivering fruit with the flatbed out of these properties. He's really shown to, he always has been very responsible. He's been driving tractors since he was 7 years old, but seeing him drive out of there in the flatbed.
Is he the 21-year-old or the 17?
No, 17. He's 17 now. He was 16 this year. And so he just got his license. And so, people were like, you're going to allow him to drive your flatbed with 4 tons of fruit down this road, off this hill. And I was a bit nervous, and I think Ashley was too. So he asked me, he said, Dad, could you just drive it out the dirt road and get me onto the pavement, and I'll take it from there? So I said, yeah, no problem. Yeah. So I got him out to the end of the road. We switched. He took it down, delivered it to Beringer, delivered to Handwritten, and you know, I think it was a really empowering moment for him to be able to feel like I can do this. You know, it's something my dad, my mom has always done, but you know, but again, I don't know if that's something he wants to do in his life. And our 15-year-old daughter, we don't know whether she wants to do it in her life as well. And so we encourage them. We try to get them involved as much as we can, but we don't make them work for the company. And I just,
Right.
we want them to come at it organically and not feel like I always had to do this. I hated it when I was growing up. And so we'll see.
But they do understand it's a family business. This is your responsibility this time of year.
Yeah.
So
There's certain things we
that's,
do
you know,
require.
there's certain things that we require. And I think they appreciate that, you know, hopefully.
No, and it's, I like that kind of that adult rite to passagehood, you know, kind of like, oh, okay, I was able to accomplish this type of thing. So that's a huge empowering moment for him.
Yeah, we
And-
hope so.
No, and we were joking prior to starting that when I was 17, I was making certain my fake ID didn't get confiscated. I was not, and I would like to have a show of hands in the chat line, please. And everyone bear me out, ladies included. I'm sure some of you had fake IDs back in the day with your driver's license. I learned an interesting factoid about Mission Control who used to make
Yeah.
fake IDs. So thank Nick Schramm. Thank you for bailing me out. Nick had 2 fake IDs. So Scotland,
Depending on what
Kiefer,
country he was in, huh?
yeah, Scotland had all my fake IDs taken away at a bar in DC. So see, all of us from a similar era, and some things don't change, but
Yeah.
that's a riot. Doug Rutherford says, no, I was too chicken. There was a bit of trepidation, but if you grew up with older brothers and sisters like I did, they were usually your supplier.
That's exactly.
So, but you're right. There's a lot of changes now. So I don't know how parents are doing it these days, because there can't be anything that a child can pull over their parents.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
We
We feel that way.
that.
The technology, the technology still stops us in our tracks, so they can get around all our
Yeah.
blocks on technology. So that I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, we'll
but-
see.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We think they aren't pulling anything over us, and then when they turn 21 or 22, or they get married, they're going to start showing you some
Yeah,
pictures.
We
of your
realize exactly.
I like Stefan says, I never needed a fake ID. I grew up in Germany. The drinking age was 16.
There you go.
There you go.
Exactly.
So I do have one poll question that kind of dovetails off of this subject, because I love the agricultural aspect, because you really have a connection to the land. And you are farmers. I grew up on a farm, didn't do it, it was row crops, beans and corn in the Midwest, but it wasn't anything like what you're doing. But I'm always curious if in fact, if you weren't making wine and meeting great people, we would be developing healthy agricultural plant strains for human consumption. We would be remote vineyard consulting from a beach. We cannot think of doing anything more satisfying than wine. And so I can already see answers are all over the board. And the nice thing is that I don't want to say our supporters cheat and use their smartphones to get some of these answers in weeks prior. But this one they can't research. So, all right, I'm going to give this 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And it is all over the board. So we've got develop healthy agriculture, remote vineyard consulting, or cannot think of anything more satisfying. So if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
If we weren't farming grapes, we'd be farming. I mean, honestly, that's really where our passion is farming some really beautiful crops for people to enjoy. Food and wine go so well together, but farming's our passion. That's what there's so much benefit we see from really good work with the soil. And
Well, Ashley said to me not that long ago, she said, what if we were to sell the vineyard and buy a big cattle ranch somewhere? And I was like, a cattle ranch? I don't know anything about cattle. But Yeah, and that, I don't know. Yeah, just something to do with the land and raising something. I think is what Ashley and I have always loved to do. It's a challenge. It's interesting, and so yes, it would still be in some form of farming.
Well, and I find it interesting how you got into farming if you both grew up in military families. I don't draw the connection there.
John actually works, he's been walking fields since he was 15, so.
Growing up in the San Joaquin Valley,
Right.
pretty much all your friends are farmers. It's, you know, just
Exactly.
who you are. When my dad retired from the Navy and we moved up there, just where my grandparents lived, I just grew up around mostly farm kids or dairy kids, I loved it. Now, every father of friends of mine, when I would tell him I wanted to go into farm, he said, don't do it. I mean, because the San Joaquin Valley it's a tough place to farm. Commodities out there, you know, when you're growing cotton and it's doing fine one year and it's horrible the next year, it's a little bit in some ways harder life than growing great wine and knowing you have a product that somebody's going to contract you for many years. And so I understood kind of what they were getting at, but I just love what they did out there. I love the idea of farming. And so, yeah, it was something I knew from a young age I was going to do.
Well, I think it's awesome that you're doing something connected to the land, and farming is difficult. Growing grapes is, I think, really difficult because there's so much outside of your control.
Well,
And
That's been the most frustrating piece in the last few years is the fires and, you know, what's been going on, you know, in California. It's just made it where it's made all the inputs we put in, you know, just very difficult to not even be able to, you know, produce these beautiful products, you know, because of something completely out of our control.
Yeah, I mean, 3 out of the last 4 years, and you guys across the country have heard, you know, you follow the news, you see what's going on. I mean, literally 3 out of the last 4 years at harvest, which is the most stressful, you know, it's your time that we finally get to pull these things and get them to the winery. And you're told you can't even get to your property because the roads are blocked, fires are going, and it's just it's just not something we were prepared for, I guess. You knew you're going to deal with drought and, you know, water and pests
and frost years and those types of
those
things.
things were
kind of
inherent with farming.
Things. It's the fires,
fires
and
have
the
been-
change in California that's been the most difficult.
And I think most of us, if you asked most of us in this industry, would, I think, have a similar answer. At least we all, as we talk, we just can't understand in some ways what we've been going through, just trying to just be farmers, be winemakers. And yet at our most critical period, we're dealing with something completely out of our hands. And it's been a challenge.
And like we talked earlier, you know, there's no guidebook for that. You can take the pests, you can take the insects, you can take the frost, because that's all part of farming. The drought years, the excessive heat years, but fires, earthquakes, I mean, those aren't anticipated. And so it's crazy. I do want to show, now that we know that this is an absolute perfect Thanksgiving wine, where people can find this wine. So if you go to the Cellar Angels website and you are not on your profile page, you can go to wine and you will see the ability to order not only virtual wine tasting kits for Thanksgiving that we've prepared for you, but also the Lampyridae Vineyards 2018 Grenache.
All right.
So this is a steal of a Grenache, only 100 cases made, as you just heard. It is going to pair with just about everything on the Thanksgiving table, not mac and cheese, Sean. So I know that's a regular staple item in the Manning household for things. Actually, Sean is an excellent cook when it comes to smoking meat. So I would imagine this would be simply fantastic with ham, brisket, and those sorts of things. But it really is something special. And so I want to just let people know it's on the website right now. Next week, interestingly enough, we have another Rhone, Jeff Loomis. And Jeff this was actually named before the fires, but this is called Ember. And Jeff is the only 100% Rhone varietal grower in all of Napa. So he doesn't do anything but Rhone varieties.
Okay, yeah.
And I encourage people to check out the Thanksgiving kits. Definitely grab some of this Grenache. I know we will, because as the famous, I think it was Remington that said, you know, I'm not just the owner of the company, I'm a customer. So, so we we drink what we buy and buy what we drink, and this has been spectacular. You guys have been amazing. And is there anything that we should know in closing that we don't already know or that you want to leave the audience with?
I'm taking her out to dinner tonight after this. We had somebody.
All right.
Yeah, it's a Friday night date night. So.
Yeah, it's early here.
No,
And
that's fine. Well,
Napa's opening up. You know, we're at, I think, at 50% capacity now, and we have a lot of outdoor dining. It's got a little cold today. This is the first day of kind of.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to come visit right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the wineries are open, the restaurants have sidewalk dining. It feels like you're in Paris or, you know, somewhere in Europe. It's really really a beautiful place to be, especially this time of year. So
Yeah, the
And
COVID thing is interestingly brought a new dynamic to Napa. We didn't do a lot of, for whatever reason, outdoor dining. And it's really pushed all the restaurants. Every restaurant has built a parklet now outside to sit, you know, in the parking spaces. And yeah, it's really created a very interesting, we were talking with one of the supervisors a couple weeks ago, and I said, what do you think? Is this going to continue? Because I don't see why we wouldn't. It's really created a really vibrant, interesting downtown that we didn't have as much of before. And so that's really exciting. We really like what it looks like.
that's actually pretty cool because I know they shut down a couple streets in Chicago for a couple weekends to try it out, but I can definitely see where that would have appeal in downtown Napa from it
Absolutely.
provides that whole international bistro feel and people are sitting outside. That's a great idea.
The weather's so nice most of the year here, so it really is beautiful to be outside. So.
Well, we're by the way, if someone wants to come taste your wines, can they do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do small group tastings up at the Vineyard. It's a commitment, as you have explained, to get up there and to be there. But if people want to come, absolutely. So.
Perfect. Well, the next time we are out there, we are going to see you in person, and we hope to get out there soon. I can't thank you enough for the hospitality. Your graciousness knows no limits, and the farming and agricultural side of this business is extremely difficult. So thanks for putting in those hours. As we always say, the proof is in the bottle, and you guys just do it so well and with so much commitment and heartfelt praise that we are humbled to be able to spend some time with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you
you.
so much for having us on here and thinking
Thanks
of us.
to everybody
And,
for spending some time with us. Appreciate
You got it. Stay safe. Be good to one another, everyone, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
Take
All
care.
right.